We'll call the meeting to order at 1:31. The roll call. Mayor Todd Lands is the chair. We'll go this way to
Oh, Susie Holmes, Finance Director.
David Kelly, City Manager.
Councilmember Melanie Bagby.
Evan Thompson is the city manager.
I think this guy you listed correctly.
Now you know it's official. Okay, public comments. Public may speak on any item not listed on the agenda at this time. There's no public in the room, and there's no attendees that are from the public. So if there's anyone else from our committee that'd like to, saying that. Any written communications, David?
No written communications for the packet.
Approval of minutes from November 6th.
Happy to recommend approval.
Anyone against? Seeing none. Into E, new business. E1, discussion, budget update on general fund revenue forecasts.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, Chair, Councilmember Bagby. This item, it was agendized under new business to initiate discussion on the budget in preparation for development of the fiscal year, the next 2-year fiscal year 24-25 and 25-26 budget. In preparation for preparation of the new budget, we want to cover all the basic elements of the budget, starting with revenue, with a focus on general fund revenue. Joining us today is Tom Adams. Tom is our sales tax consultant with Avenue. Avenue is a firm that we've worked with for quite a few years, and they provide us quarterly sales tax reports. And Tom can kind of introduce himself and provide an overview of what services they provide for the city. But in addition to, once Mr. Adams completes his presentation, we do have some additional items in the packet that cover other revenue sources. And there's not a tremendous amount of detail, but we'll just kind of talk about the major revenues that make up our general fund, and how staff goes about forecasting those for budget purposes. And again, this is the opportunity to provide feedback, input, direction on any of the matters that we discussed for the budget. But I want to go ahead and turn it over at this point, if it's okay with you, Mayor, to Tom to walk us through a presentation. Again, really focusing on sales tax revenue. Great. So, Tom, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you great. And Councilmember Bagby just stepped out. She's giving a glass of water.
Okay.
But take a moment and just introduce yourself.
Sure. Tom Adams. I'm with our firm here in California is known as Manny Services. We're also our kind of umbrella title is Avenue Insights and Analytics. We provide sales tax and other related revenue services for clients throughout California. The primary services we provide clients such as yourselves are kind of twofold. One part is the part that I handle, which is reporting. We meet with staff every quarter. We kind of walk through your sales tax, how the individual businesses are performing. We also have sort of a back office that reviews all of the transactions that are happening in the sales tax world to make sure that you guys are receiving all the sales tax you're entitled. So we have both an audit function and sort of a reporting and forecasting function. I'm going to go through, if it's okay with you guys, with a brief presentation today, just to kind of give you an overview of your sales tax. One thing that I'll mention before I begin is the state treats individual business performance as confidential. So I'm not going to kind of get into specific business performance. So the layout that I'm going to give in the presentation is sort of constrained by some of those requirements from the state. So the way that I'll be presenting it is in a non-confidential manner. Let me see if I can get us going here. Right. Does that look like something you guys want to see?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, just put it in slide presentation format, and then we're good to go.
Okay. Here we go. Does that look decent, David?
Yeah, you have it. We have it kind of in note format. If you want to, can you make it so it's showing your whole screen?
Yeah. Whoops. Okay. Or why maybe if I get rid of that, is that better?
We have your screen, you probably have our screen, because that's a presenter screen that we're seeing. But
Okay.
there, that's better, that'll do.
Okay. All right. Well, okay, let's go ahead and I'll zip through this fairly quickly. So your primary sales tax drivers are gas stations and kind of related. Some of the gas stations are kind of what are called card lock, and they kind of fall in the energy category. But in general, gas stations provide over a third of your sales tax. So they are one of your key elements. It's also one of the most volatile areas just because the price of gas can bounce around quite a bit. The next biggest area is what we call the county pool. The county pool is what's is considered use tax. This is kind of non-local sales tax that's coming into your city from outside of the state. Large elements of that are e-commerce, things like construction and B2B activity. They're coming from outside. Construction itself is a fairly large area at 14%. Restaurants, you can see at 12%. Food markets, liquor stores, and kind of winery related sales are another area. Then you see retail at 9%. And the last category is pretty small, kind of B2B industrial type activity and miscellaneous. One thing I wanted to note here is a lot of people think of sales tax, they think of retail establishments. It's really a pretty small number, as you can see here, less than 10% of your sales tax coming from retail related activity, whereas a large portion coming from gas stations. This is your top 25. I think this was included with the agenda. I'm not going to spend too much time on here. You can see there's a lot of service stations, gas stations on here. You can see there's some food markets, some restaurants, some kind of more kind of general retailers, CVS, dollar store, those sort of things, as well as some construction related business like Classic Mill and Cabinet, West Coast Door, etc.
Hey, and Tom, if I can real quick, this is the first time that I recall seeing Molly Works.
Yes,
Material
because
Corporation.
they're finally selling stuff.
Yeah, they've really jumped up on the list.
Yeah.
In terms of the sales tax contributions to the city, and that's good to see. It's one of our few industrial businesses in town. As you know, Tom shows here, it's a lot of auto, gas stations, restaurant, particularly fast food, and then some of our larger retailers. But I just kind of want to point that one out because it's kind of a shining bright spot for us to have Molly Works and they're selling and generating sales tax for us.
Yeah.
Okay, in terms of your kind of recent history, we use this slide. Most of the data we deal with is not inflation adjusted. This slide is inflation adjusted. So you can see here we have on the far left 2019. This is sort of pre-pandemic. Then we have kind of a couple pandemic affected years in 2020 and part of 2021. Then we have sort of the recovery kind of coming out of that. The key that I wanted to show you here is you didn't really have too much impact from the pandemic. Most of the categories, as well as the overall numbers, didn't change too much or too dramatically like they did in other parts of the state. Pre-pandemic, you were at about 117 per capita. You're now at about 116 on the far right side. So you've basically come back for most of these areas pretty close to where you were prior to the pandemic. There have been some changes. Construction had some strong activity for a couple of years. I think that may have been related to some kind of fire recovery, those sorts of things. It's since kind of come back into maybe a new normal, if you will. Transportation has been increasing a little bit. Some of that's the increasing price of gas and that sort of thing. So some of these dynamics change a little bit. The county pool this is some of the e-commerce related monies down here at the bottom. We did have a little bit more money come in related to something called the Wayfair Agreement, which was a Supreme Court case that allowed the state to start collecting for things like the Amazon third parties selling through the Amazon platform, that sort of thing. All right, if we're looking at kind of recently what's been going on, this is the last 5 years on the left. You can see the color lines are kind of how each of these five main categories that we track are performing over time. You can see that transportation, as I had mentioned before, is kind of the largest part of your overall sales tax in the blue line there. Some of the others, that's kind of been going up the last few years, just as prices have been going up. Food, a little bit more steady eddy. Construction, you can see, kind of had some peaks, has kind of been declining a bit. Retail's been about the same for the last 5 years, and B2B will sort of bounce around a little bit depending upon your businesses, and that one can be a little bit volatile, sort of like transportation with gas prices.
And Tom, if I can, just to, if you wouldn't mind just jumping back to that. So a couple of kind of key takeaways. Again, this performance table here is Q2 of 2023. So this covers periods of April, May, and June of last year. And it's typically how we get these reports. It roughly 5 to 6 months after the close of the quarter, because the quarter closes. There's usually about a 30-day time window for businesses to pay whatever taxes are due. Then it makes its way into the system, and we finally get that data about 5 minutes later. So there's always that lag. What this report basically covers is the end of the last fiscal year. As shown on this slide, what you see we collected for the quarter was 259,000, and just kind of a simple math, you can multiply 259 by 4, and that's where you're going to get kind of our approximate total. Now, I mean, again, remember that there's some seasonality. You can see it here with the ups and downs of each of the categories. So where that lands is we're a little over $1 million on an annual basis from sales tax. And I don't know, Tom may touch on that, but again, these are our major categories: general retail, food products, transportation, construction, and B2B, and that's what constitutes our quarterly sales tax. And maybe, Tom, can you touch just briefly on this data versus cash?
Yeah, good point. So when we were looking here, is this a little bit better in terms of presentation? Can you see that a little better? Okay.
Yeah, that's all.
The bottom, so in terms of cash, the state, what you're most interested obviously is how much cash is coming through the door, but the state kind of has to process everything, and then there can occasionally be misallocations. You guys had a large one. I'll sort of highlight that a little bit later in my presentation. But when we're looking through your numbers, basically, there's these 5 kind of main categories, and we have the county pool at the bottom. So when we're looking at your 5 main categories here, typically these are going to be around 80 to 85% of your revenue is going to kind of come in from what we call your local businesses that we're looking at here. As David had mentioned, we try, to the extent we can, we try to balance the numbers in an economic basis, so that if a business pays late, we put in an estimate, or if there's a sudden kind of spike for a misallocation, we take that out so that we can actually see kind of what your economic performance is during this time period and for the year, without some of those sort of timing issues affecting how the numbers look. One more thing I wanted to note here is when we're talking quarter over quarter, as David had said, there's some seasonality. So we're always going to compare back to the same quarter a year prior. So when we're comparing 2023 Q2 and it says the quarter over quarter is down 1%, That's comparing 23 Q2 to 22 Q2. It's not the immediate prior quarter. It's a year back. Then you can see the year over year is the last 4 quarters versus the prior 4 quarters. In this case, they happen to be a fiscal year, so we're comparing the most recent fiscal year to the prior fiscal year. Again, this portion of your local businesses is about 85% of your sales tax. The county pool, which is tracked on a cash basis, is that final 15%. And those are the things like e-commerce and other items sort of being shipped into the district that are not local businesses that are tracked by the state a little differently. All right, if we're looking forward to the future, we can see on this page sort of where you've been in the past in the yellow. There was a large correction related to Verizon a few years back that you got some money that you should not have, and we discussed it with staff, and that money eventually had to be returned to the state, then reallocated. So we have corrected this chart to reflect that not happening, basically. So you get a better idea of sort of where your numbers have been through time. The gray numbers are sort of where we're forecasting you going forward. You can see that we're being a little bit more conservative with our growth model for you going forward than we have in the past. Basically, we feel like that things we're on a little bit slower track kind of going forward. And you can see basically over the most recent history has been a little slower than we had been. So we're sort of reflecting that going out. In general, we're trying to be a little bit more conservative with your forecast for this year, reflecting that there is some uncertainty with the overall economic environment. When we have uncertainty, it means that there's a greater potential for kind of variance on the high side as well as the low side. We typically will forecast a little bit more conservatively for our clients. Past year, as you can see here for the forecast, up about 2.6%. That 2.6 includes both the local numbers as well as the county pool. Those kind of combined in a cash amount, you are up about 2.6. For the current year, we're forecasting you'll be up about 1.5. Again, your forecast is a little harder than some because fuel prices are the hardest to predict in the short and medium term, as well as the long term. But a lot of your sales tax businesses are a little bit more steady Eddie. We basically know what McDonald's is going to do next year or this year. For fuel, that can kind of bounce around just based on energy prices in the state. We do anticipate some kind of bounce back next year with a little bit of growth up to about that 3% number. We're kind of dialing that back. I think our next forecast, we may dial that back a little bit. You guys are a fairly small district, city. So when we look at these numbers, it's not in terms of a dollar amount, it's not a huge dollar change. But your businesses in the past have been fairly steady. Again, if you get a decent new business that's reporting, David had mentioned one earlier at Mollyworks, I think it was, that can affect you fairly dramatically. And we did see your numbers spike due to some of that construction activity. I think that was some of the fire recovery for a few years. So, but on the downside, I mean, on the declining side, I don't think you have too much risk on that side, especially some cities are have a little more risk. Say if there's a recession, you guys don't have as much, just because you don't have the types of businesses that typically are going to show significant declines. So that's overall a good thing for you.
And hey, Tom, if you don't mind jumping back just to kind of close out this slide. So
yeah.
As I indicated earlier, this is Q2 for last fiscal year. So basically this number right here for fiscal year 23-24 is what gets plugged into the audit, right? Susie, that's
The budget?
Budget. Yeah.
Well, for the fiscal year we just closed out.
22, 23.
Oh, 22, 23.
Yeah,
That's right, we're not 24, 25
yeah,
yet. So this becomes a number that is in the audit, and then that will help inform where, we compare that against what we budgeted, but we have a known number at this point, so and then we'll usually we'll compare this number every time we meet with Tom, based on the analysis, how individuals, businesses are performing. We kind of check the current fiscal year number against the budget to kind of see where we stand relative to budget. And of course, we're kind of forecasting ahead. Sometimes we have a good quarter, or sometimes we have a bad quarter, but are relatively speaking, so it kind of fluctuates. But really, kind of the end number is what we have in mind in terms of the budget.
right. And when we created our budget, we thought we were going to have about $200,000 more than what these are showing now.
Sorry, Tom.
Yeah, no, thanks for the help there, David. Just a few more things in terms of the kind of the future is we would our kind of macro, if you will, forecast assumes a mild slowdown. We're not really calling it a recession per se. A recession is usually nationwide. It usually signifies a significant increase in unemployment. However, a lot of the recent surveys have shown sort of a negative sentiment with the overall consumer. We're reflecting that here. We are anticipating inflation to moderate to kind of more normal levels next fiscal year. Inflation's sort of a funny thing because it's both a push and a pull, in the sense that increased prices do actually increase, the sales tax revenues, but they do. And typically, lead to a potential decrease in consumption as people have less money to spend, kind of theoretically. We didn't really see that much with high inflation this time around. Part of that was people thought it was temporary, and I guess it was to a certain extent, as well as people had higher than normal savings coming out of the pandemic and that sort of thing. So, last, as I had mentioned, we have our kind of predictions in terms of this volatility, uncertainty, kind of uncharted waters. We had a sort of once in 100 years sort of event with the pandemic in terms of this unusual event that created almost an artificial recession. Then we had this significant recovery. Again, you guys weren't impacted as much as many areas that we work with throughout the state. But there's still this uncertainty kind of with the overall economy in terms of where we are, and whether a recession is looming out there somewhere. Kind of if there is a recession, kind of how long will it be? How long will it last? Most analysts think that if we do see an actual recession, it's not going to be very deep. It's not going to be very long. Nothing like the recession we saw in 2008, something like that. Some of these other questions, obviously, where's the American consumer going to be in the next year or two? Kind of what's going to happen with gas prices? You guys are kind of exposed a little bit more there in terms of your sales tax revenues than many. How long is inflation going to continue to impact the economy? And we have some uncertainty around the federal election next year, as well as kind of the psychology of markets and consumers related to that. And lastly, kind of when we're going to kind of achieve a new normal and kind of what might that look like. And I think we're kind of starting to get there, but there's still some of this uncertainty out there in the overall kind of economic world. That's about it that I had for you today. I'm happy to take any questions.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Great presentation. And thank you for it mostly being in English. Can you go back to I think it's the second slide where you had the bullet points of the different sectors of sales tax, or maybe, yeah, way back. So next, there you go, primary drivers. So you've got gas stations, auto repair, energy. What do you mean by energy specifically where Cloverdale is?
Yeah, so the
Sorry.
way we track our businesses are kind of two ways. The old way that we tracked them were according to certain categories that were called business identification categories. The newer way that the state, as well as most, the federal government, as many others, are called NAICS categories. So we kind of, the NAICS categories don't really provide us with good trends because there's so many of them. So we have to kind of crosswalk back to our old categories to do the tracking. One of the areas in terms of energy is the reason I put that with gas stations is because it's related to the price of fuel. Well, energy typically is. So it's things like you might have, say a propane company would fall under energy.
Okay.
But the other thing that falls under energy are companies that are called card lock gas stations. So the way they sort of report is not as a typical gas station. So they're a little different, but in a sense you wouldn't really notice the difference. And that was primarily why I put them there, because we're looking at both propane sales as well as card lock as well as traditional gas stations. This line here is primarily gas stations. I should let you know about 90% of this line is gas stations.
Yeah, in our instance, I was more interested in like the ratio, so gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Same slide. If you have something like a Chevron with a food market, is that separated between both gas station and the food market?
It's not. So most of those businesses will report them together. You don't have this issue, but the one that separates them is Safeway. So, it depends on the business, but Costco reports them together. Most typical service stations with a mini mart will report them together. Safeway is the only one that reports their gas station separate from their actual market store.
Thank you. Any other questions from anyone else at this point?
And when you say sales tax, you are saying sales tax, you're not saying use tax.
It's sales and use. That's a good point. So it is sales and
that's where it gets confusing, because
Yeah.
you've got retail at 9% and then energy, because card lock is use tax and propane at Ace Hardware is retail.
Yeah.
At least in my mind, I think that's how it's supposed to be accounted for. Is that the case?
Correct. So usually when we're talking at the state level and we're talking about use tax, we're talking about a business that does not have a point of sale location within the state of California. And so we're talking about businesses coming in from outside of the state. So that's that second line, the county, the internet / non-local / pool. Typically that's going to be considered your use tax.
So that's where that's being accounted for.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Everything that has a point of sale within the state will get the tax. This is sort of a hot topic at sort of the League of Cities and other places,
Yeah.
because certain cities will have sales tax sharing agreements and those sorts of things, and as to whether those are sort of above board or not, and is to how e-commerce should be handled in general. So if we were to really get into the weeds, we could really kind of split open that second bullet and kind of look at kind of how use tax is being handled currently, and in whether like Apple computers, their sales tax agreement is being looked at by the state. eBay's is being looked at in San Jose. So there's a lot of kind of activity both amongst the League of Cities and the legislature, as well as at the kind of at the state bureaucratic level as well, and just kind of reviewing all these things. It's basically the pool was sort of set up for administrative convenience. I don't know when it was, like 50 years ago, before the internet sort of e-commerce was even around. it really wasn't much, the use tax wasn't really that great. But now that e-commerce has become such a big part of the overall economy and a fairly large part of the sales tax revenues as well, it's become a much larger issue.
Yep, I just came home from a Cal Cities meeting in Southern California, so.
Yeah.
I can talk about it there, Tom, don't worry about it.
It's a hot topic. Fran Mancia from our company has been serving on the I think it's the city manager's working group of the Revenue and Taxation Committee. So he has been very involved with working with the different cities. And as you might imagine, there's winners and there's losers. The winners are about maybe 10 or 15% of the cities throughout the state. The kind of neutral or losers are probably about 85%, something like that. But it all kind of depends on how you look at it, and there are various kind of policy considerations to consider as well here.
And Mayor, before Tom goes, just to touch on how we utilize this data for budget purposes. So what Tom shared with us was a quarterly snapshot, and of course, those same 5 categories. What community services will do is look at a forecast, based on the general economy, actually kind of based on individual business performance, and do a forecast for the next fiscal year. In that forecast, they will show kind of three scenarios, which they refer to as the conservative, the most likely, and the optimistic. And our process, internal process, has been, for budgetary purposes, is to use the most likely number for the budget. So, for example, for fiscal year 23-24, community services is forecast indicates that a conservative projection is about 1,124,000. Most likely is 1,178,000, and then and an optimistic is 1,233,000. So in our case, they're fairly tight, but there's still some room there between those numbers. We default to the most likely. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, but your conservative numbers are fairly conservative.
Yeah, I mean, again, a city your size, it depends a little bit, on kind of how, the price of fuel is kind of the most important element for your city. So, and that is the hardest one for us to sort of predict. That we can have a pretty good crystal ball on where retail is going to go, where your restaurants are going to go, and where a lot of the other parts are. But in terms of fuel prices, that can be a little bit more difficult to predict.
I kind of have a question with that, dude. And I'll join in. We're seeing it turn towards a recession style economy here. Should we be more conservative with our numbers instead of saying the most likely? I mean, we're operating in a deficit. Should we be operating more conservatively? Start and say, hey, look, we're going to tighten the belt now, and hopefully come out in the black with that instead.
Yeah, I mean,
if I could just add to that, I think that Sebastopol's a cautionary tale there.
Yeah.
And that's, they're in a very bad position. So
Right.
I'd rather err on the side of being a little bit more conservative and then being like, yay, look, it's not as bad as we thought it was going to be. We can actually pick back up on some things that maybe because we'll always have a CIP. We'll always have a list of things we want to fund. I think it is. I think I kind of am picking up on what you're saying, which is like, hey, are your conservative numbers really conservative? And are they conservative enough for our decision making? Just considering what the environment that we're in right now.
right.
Well, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, but they come up with the most likely scenario and then they go 5% up or 5% down. So
Yeah.
It's,
Error, yeah.
yeah,
Right.
But it's a good point, and I mean, to kind of add to
The
the.
Knox basketball, especially for one of your cities, I don't mean, but I think that they had to make some very difficult decisions during the pandemic, and it just didn't get a lot better, and now they're really, really hurting. I don't want our community to be in that position.
Right, and staff's certainly fine with your direction, if the direction is, let's use the conservative numbers, we'll do that. And kind of to support that, we can look at where our budget number is for fiscal year 22-23, which was 1,271,000, and actual was 1,161,000. So we're about 110,000 under what we budgeted in terms of revenue. So had we budgeted the most conservative, it probably would have not eliminated that deficit, but
Close that gap.
it would close that gap.
Yeah. It
And-
makes
and-
it easier to
Right,
find some solutions, yeah.
So, again, I think community services does a great job with their forecast and their work. They use, is it the UCLA school
For our macro stuff, yeah.
for,
Anderson
tracking the macro,
forecast.
the Anderson forecast. So, they do a lot of data crunching, and, the staff ultimately picks the most likely, but I think, given direction, we'll use conservative figures going forward.
Yeah.
And that would be what's reflected on that chart for fiscal year 24-25 and 25-26. And it does show, I mean, one thing that's pretty clear is the forecast. In the last 5 years, we've seen fairly good growth in our sales tax revenue. I know when I started here in 2016, I kind of looked at it as a benchmark number. It was about mid 600,000, and we're now up over 1 million. But now with relatively, we're not seeing grocery outlets and dollar store and
We're pretty built out where those kinds of establishments.
Right.
So I think that, but also I think that, sorry, Tom, to belabor this,
Oh,
but
no.
when we present this to the rest of the council, we also have to reflect on how important it is to protect our zoning, because in Molly Works being the perfect example of that, protecting our industrial zoning, so that we're making sure that we are looking at our land use decisions to position ourselves to maximize our sales tax revenues, or and not necessarily maximize at the at the expense of everything else, but that future revenue stream, so that we can protect our vital services, it has to be a part of so many of the other policy decisions that we're making. And everything kind of has to go through that lens. And sales tax, even though it's we don't get enough of this. Right, locally, and it's what we all cities complain about that. But in some ways, Cloverdale is lucky, because I think, as Tom pointed out, is that we're just much more because of our revenue sources. So, but I think that, going forward in the budget process, we also have to kind of, part of that discussion with the rest of the council has to be making sure that we're making the right decisions that protect our property tax revenue and our sales tax revenue. I'm not sure that's something that we've always, because that's not always been at the forefront of decision making.
And that's what I was just going to comment on exactly, but that is our growth boundaries. Annexing places like the businesses right on the north end of town that's not in, it's in county and not in city.
Absolutely, and as we have just really dropped the ball on that, I think also, addressing the zoning at the south end of town is delayed far too long, to the point where we missed out on some potential revenue at the end of the wine storage facilities specifically. But then on the upside, having annexed the industrial area and, specifically Royser, we're finally kind of seeing that pay off. We need to make sure that we protect those kinds of investments. So yeah, going forward, it just needs to be at the forefront of our policy making.
Okay, well, Tom, thank you. Any other?
All right, guys,
Good, thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
thanks for having me. Enjoy the rest of your day and I'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Bye.
Is he coming back to the council with a full presentation, or are we just?
Well, let Susie and I work with Tom
Okay.
on that. I think maybe, an update to council as part of the budget process will be
Yeah, I
fun.
agree.
So
That's
we'll work with you, Tom, on your schedule. and
Okay.
your-
Sounds good. All right, guys. Bye-bye.
Well, I think some of the comments by council members today, it kind of also reflects on some of our other major revenue sources. Included in your agenda packet as an attachment is the snapshot of our major budget revenues. And I think it's page 1 of the attachment. We just want to take a few moments to kind of walk you through what constitutes our major revenue sources. So this actually comes from OpenGov. This is a report.
This one?
No,
Sorry,
it's this one.
Oh, at the
Very,
If you go to the agenda.
should it be page 1?
page one, I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Oh, page
Okay.
1 is in page
Sorry.
Sorry.
We really focused with the presentation from Tom on, just one of the revenues, which was the sales and use tax. And as you can see, it's got the $1,243,563. We again picked that from the most likely forecast that was provided by Community Services. They do, and we usually use the last available forecast when it comes time to do the budget. And obviously every quarter they update it based on, economic trends, business performance, etc. So it's always an evolving number, and I'm always fingers crossed that the end of the year is going to come in better. But sometimes it has, and this last fiscal year it did not. But the other revenues that are reflected here include, of course, your cannabis excise tax. There's a report that is included in this understanding items. You can really see the trend there with respect to the decline in cannabis excise revenue. That I think is a reflection of two things. One is economic activity by the cannabis industry, but it's also a change in the tax rate. And probably a change in the tax rate is probably the biggest change. And so you see that corresponding impact on revenues. The other report, or the other general tax, is the utility user tax. This again is a voter approved initiative that's collected on certain utilities. We can see the actual amount there for this most recent fiscal year, 22-23, was 570,000. We did see a little bit of an increase in UUT, I think, during the pandemic. I don't know if that was because of streaming services or what exactly. Maybe more people working from home, internet.
Lots of binge watching.
Right. So I think when we passed that, we estimated somewhere around 475, 450, but the UUT seems to perform well. That's a fairly steady tax.
Do we get a little bit of gas off of, do we get a little bit of natural gas sales off of that as well for utility tax? Just wondering.
Recall any
It's mostly just telecommunications.
yeah, your cell, Comcast,
Yeah.
being the big one.
Okay.
And so year to date, that's because off of UT, I think, comes in on a quarterly basis, because it should
Yeah.
for 161.
Mhm.
The other taxes include business license tax. It's a relatively, we call it's listed as a tax. It's really not a tax.
It's
More
a
of
fee.
It's a fee. You can see, it's a fairly small amount when in comparison to our total revenue. Moving from there, we have our transit occupancy tax, TOT. This is otherwise our hotel tax. Again, last year, we kind of closed out the fiscal year at about 256,000, almost on target. And we are performing the audits, so to ensure that the taxes that we collect from our local stays, heads and beds, as we like to say, it is reflective of actual stays here. In comparison to other cities, that's an area where we really lag painfully. The franchise tax, below that, does you recall what's the franchise tax? That's our fees on PG&E,
Also,
solid
Yeah.
waste,
yeah,
ecology,
Yeah.
and I think Comcast, have,
Yes.
I think the three
Yeah.
franchisees pay taxes. And, the thing that's important there is really for us to continue monitoring legislation, because the utilities are always trying to find ways to reduce their franchise tax payments. Even we did that with Recology as kind of a negotiated deal to reduce the rate increases to our customers. Allows for increases in their payments to the city, but at reduced rates. Again, we covered sales and use tax, and then the big brother on the block is property taxes. And
Meat and potatoes.
this is where we, seen historically over the last 10 years, the most growth. And, we mentioned annexations, gaining that land basis into the city is, there's really two components of property taxes. It's both the land and then there's improvements. And so when we see a project that gets developed, that's usually adds to the improvement value. So anytime a new housing project, except for affordable, market rate, or commercial project, that's going to add to our assessed valuation in the improvement category. But when we annex unimproved land, we are getting that tax basis for the value, the base value of that property. And I think that represents an opportunity for us to get, even the open space properties, get those in the city. Maybe more importantly is to reduce our expenditures on the property tax side, because we pay taxes on those.
That's a double dip. You're
Yeah.
not paying it, you're
Yeah.
getting it.
Right, we're not getting the taxes and we're having to pay it.
Yeah.
Typically, the county will issue kind of their analysis of the property taxes somewhat early in the calendar year, and then they kind of true it up after, I think it's after kind of the April tax payments. So Cindy, maybe you want to kind of touch on property taxes and how we forecast those.
Sure, we forecast them directly from the analysis that's done by the county. They tell us we're anticipating that there's gonna be a 3%, 7%, whatever increase or decrease is that they're expecting. And we go directly from that. They won't have those numbers. But like March or April is when we'll have the first number that they'll come up with as an estimate, and then later.
But one thing we know is, with projects, get a certificate of occupancy, that, the county is pretty adept at getting all of our building permit data. And so they put that on the assessor roll. Obviously, well, it's something I want to kind of talk to. It's slide number 2 in your packet. Susie put this together to kind of show the relative breakdown of property tax distribution in Sonoma County. And, you can see here that this is kind of a generalization. Actually, within the city, there are what's referred to as tax rate areas. So the entire city isn't one tax rate area. there's multiple, and we've tried our best to determine on how those were originally established, but within each tax rate area, there's a slightly different percentage that goes the property taxes that are paid that go to the city. And so what you see here is kind of an average on average across the tax rate area, 21%, 21.3% of local property taxes are paid to the city. The bulk really goes to two entities, either the county general fund or schools. And the schools, I think, includes the Santa Rosa Junior College as well. So both schools and the county receive nearly 70% of the total property taxes that are collected. But even then, that growth, it does grow our base and help us out. And that's why redevelopment was so valuable, because it'll enable a larger portion of the total taxes by way of increment to be returned to the city's former redevelopment agency. They still technically do that calculation, but then they send that tax increment, they send it out to the taxing agencies as kind of a separate payment. But we often hear residents say, "Why pay taxes?" Well, does not always come with the understanding that the amount of property taxes paid, the bulk of which goes to again, schools and the county, and then there are these special districts, the Cloverdale Fire District, which of course is important, and the county library. So I kind of just wanted to point that out just from a kind of educational perspective, and when people ask about where are our taxes going.
I think salaries.
Right. But with just kind of again going down the list of revenues, licensing permits, intergovernmental revenues, charges for services, special assessments. The special assessment could be like a code enforcement, you have miscellaneous revenue and other financing sources, which others usually grants.
And transfers.
And transfers.
Transfers between.
License and permits, we often estimate, we try to look at what projects are coming forward and work with Coastland on building permit activity, also looking at collection permit activity, and try to do our best to estimate again the revenue that's coming in for those permits. And then charges for services. So you want to touch on that one a little bit?
Charges for services
Yeah.
are the fees that we charge for building permits, enrichment fees. It all goes directly through OpenGov, and we literally sit down with Kevin and code enforcement and say, "What do you think you're gonna do this year?" And that's how we come up with our budget. And but I think we'll do 4 zoning permits and
Yeah, it all adds up, right?
yeah.
I mean, short estimate how many building permits you're
Well,
gonna find yours, right?
Interest rates.
Yeah.
Yeah, that probably is a lot of it.
Right. So that's an area where we may see some decline in activity. Well, it's kind of interesting during the pandemic, we saw it, I think a lot of building permit activity picked up, remodels, I think.
People had time for.
Yeah. And that's where construction, also the retail category, we saw that West Coast Doors was really putting out a lot of
Yeah.
doors.
Yeah.
Some of those could have been new builds for fire, but it seemed like there was a lot of local building permits. Let's see, I think it did just included in your packet. There's a quarterly comparison to all of your Bay Area counties and individual cities, as well as kind of a change by month in order for your Sonoma County cities. You can see our change year over year was less than, it was 0.1%, whereas other cities had a fairly significant change, either up or down. One thing that I am always amazed at is the amount of, sales tax that, Healdsburg generates. It's, nearly on the level, well, it is on the level of, it actually exceeds the level of sales tax generated in Windsor.
That's pretty amazing.
Windsor collected.
Windsor has Home Depot.
Uh,
and Walmart.
Q2, they collected $1.2 million in sales tax, whereas Hillsburg collected 1.35.
Those little handbags add up.
Yeah, and that's tourism. That's
Yes,
that's
that's exactly what that is.
Yeah.
Car dealerships too.
and part of
I'm
it.
gonna go car dealership.
Yeah.
I think Vince are gonna have a Healdsburg lumber, yeah.
Yeah. Kind of shows if you go to the right where, where some of those gains and declines are reflected. And likewise for us as well. It doesn't help us to look at their numbers other than to.
It does not help us.
But what it does help is just to kind of get a feeling when everything is down, are we more significant or less significant? So kind of that relative perspective. Tom used the term steady Eddie. I think it's a term we always hear in this presentations. And what we don't see is the volatility. And our percent change was 1%, where you have a negative 2.8, negative 4.9, negative 5.2, negative 4.9. So everyone, other than Sonoma, which was up 0.5, had more significant declines. And so it just gives you a perspective regionally what's happening in
When people ask why we don't have a skate park.
Yeah.
That's exactly why.
This is exactly why.
Yeah.
This is exactly why.
And it doesn't reflect it like in Healdsburg, for example, this is sales tax, but on their TOT, which is significant, the majority of their TOT collected goes to their community services
Yeah.
and parks department.
They actually have a Parks and Rec, and it
Yeah.
funds their senior center and, it does, and the skate park and all of those extras, and we don't have that.
I think last time I looked, it was like 3.2 million in TOT revenue going to the community services.
Yeah.
So that's, that they have one of the more wealthy parks departments, and they're able to provide those services because of taxing hotelers and people and tourists. So they do a good job of investing that money back into local parks, but they're able to do that because of the tourist activity. So, well, Mayor, that and Councilmember, that our goal was to cover and give you an overview of major revenue sources. Is part of getting prepared and informed for the budget process coming forward. We just kind of want to pause here, and we did hear direction today. Really transition to using a more conservative number for sales tax. We don't really have the same kind of projection for property tax. It kind of we try to target right at the level that it comes in at, but I guess that tends to be pretty steady. You don't see a swing in it. It's kind of a lagging indicator. So like if you're going to see a change in values now, it really takes about 2 years before you start to see it in the numbers. So we feel pretty confident and continue to use that, but that by no means does that mean that the council could say let's use a more conservative number if you feel that is the way to go on the property tax side of things.
Right. And in the past, we've used the county's estimate for the next, and then we did 3% for the future year, because there's no way that they would estimate out 2 years first. So we just did 3%.
I'd rather see us go more conservatively, but then also we need to look at increasing our revenues and working on those projects, hunkering down and working on those projects where we're increasing the speed revenues. We can't survive like that, and hope more retailers will want to come. We're going to have to take action.
Just doubles down on why we want to some of the big developers we probably to talk to about, you know, the hotel and the resort stuff and
Yeah.
things like that. So we really need to make that a priority for this next year, is to find a way to get someone to come in here to create that revenue. And a marketing scheme, maybe something we do through our chamber as a marketing for a place to stay during your touristing to the wine country and whatever they're doing, like Guilford's, they're getting $500-600 a night in these stupid rooms. If you're 10 minutes, yeah, so if you're 10 minutes away with a nice hotel.
Well, one of the things that we probably, you know, at some point down the road also need to talk about, and it's really long-term planning, is the fact that when Smart gets to Healdsburg is an internationally marketed tourist destination. And when Smart reaches it, I don't think people understand how much it's going to explode, because now you don't have to drive wine country. So Cloverdale needs to start thinking about how we're going to, you know, position ourselves to take advantage of the folks who aren't going to pay, who don't want to pay $500 a night in Healdsburg, but they're willing to drive 20 minutes. I mean, the cyclists today, I redirected 2 cyclists today on $5,000 bikes because they were looking for the bridge. They were up, you know, up by 3rd Street. It's like, oh, turn back around, go back to 1st Street, make a left, and they were going to go up and over Geysers Road, and of course they're headed back down south, because that was midday today, and which I can't even imagine doing that, right? But anyway, so you know, we need to start positioning ourselves for that kind of flow, and that's long-term planning. But maybe, you know, it's really difficult, because I think that what we kind of learned in economic development world is that you can market the heck out of something, but you have to be able to deliver, and you've got to be at the right place at the right time for people who are looking. And I think that the resort, we've done almost everything we can really to position ourselves. We need to look at smaller opportunities that are more attractive to local developers, and really focus on getting our infill in downtown. Really focus on our effective zoning to protect our industrial areas, so that we've got local jobs, and we've hopefully got more people in high tech like Molly Works who are willing to locate here when they start selling, and then they start, you know, generating sales tax. But maybe we need to just you know, start small and have some small success in refocus development in our downtown, because those are the kinds of experiences that people are really looking for. Is they want a quaint, local, walkable downtown as their destination. And if they can't afford Healdsburg, and there's very little, there's a couple of places that go that are wonderful, but again, those sell out. Then we're the next place, and we're still in the bike tour range. We are in the heart of, you know, Dry Creek, Alexander Valley. You know, we could really go after that in our downtown. So maybe we need to, you know, one way to do it is to really think small. I don't think we tried to hit a home run and it's not working, so let's get to first.
And
Yeah.
there's a couple of good things to report just on that side. We know Sawmill Saloon has been working with us. They are planning to open a restaurant, and they're also bringing additional hotel rooms online. I think there are 5.
Yeah.
5 total.
Again, it's like the Healdsburg TOT. It's like, yeah, they do have some larger, they also have like 10 room places,
Right.
12 room places. We don't have to think, you know, we can't put it all on red, you know. Alexander Valley Resorts, we can go after some of these smaller boutique places, which I guess they're finally getting there.
Yeah.
You know, wait,
How does the VRBO affect us? Because I know that we're hammering down at the code enforcement on the ones that weren't registered. And we flip that to where we say, okay, hey, let's start promoting this and getting those people on board versus trying to do it
Well,
underground.
we allow them in two zones.
Two zones, but there's a maximum number in the 2 zones, or
I don't recall.
Can we- or we just-
maximum number,
we just
but
have the 2 zones?
Yeah.
Okay.
We do allow the hosted in other areas.
So maybe we start right, but
Yeah.
no one's really doing that, and that was a downfall. So maybe that's something we look at.
The other thing is, we have Highway 10 or 101 North coming online,
Right.
which, you know, you see in those, our top generators, some of those are modest places. And then we let the mayor know this morning that there's the Dave Holt's building behind the library that's submitted for a building permit. You're talking about little things. But Dave and I have met with probably 5 or 6 prospective purchasers of the resort.
Right.
And we have really.
I pushed back until the end, we know that.
Rolled out the red carpet, so we're not gonna be a hindrance to you, but I think the price is too high.
And one of the next things you can think about as something we can control is the airport. And I know that we've talked about this in the past. The airport, in the area, everything in the area, everyone flies into Napa to come here because there's nowhere to park their planes,
Right.
their private jets. If we start privatizing some to somebody to build the hangars for the planes, that will
I don't know
bring,
if we're long enough, I don't think it's. long
that's
enough
part,
right
that's,
now.
that's,
Yeah,
that's part of
the
the.
small, but the small planes, yeah.
But if we can lengthen that runway for sure, we've been out there and looked, there's plenty of room. And if we can get that lengthened, then they can bring the small jets in here, because what they're doing is they're going, they're landing there, renting cars. And going through one camp.
All the time, yeah. Or they fly in Santa Rosa, there's still.
Well, that's the problem,
Santa
they can't
Rosa.
park at Santa Rosa,
Yeah.
that's part of the commit to, is
They
they
can't
can't anymore, they can't get somewhere to park their jet.
Yeah.
These are huge opportunities,
Like you park your jet here.
right? It just sits there, someone uses it.
Yeah. And it's not gonna go anywhere because the FAA is never going to allow that. They're never going to close an airstrip in the western United States. It's just not going to happen because we're just too big a fire risk. So there's a possibility there. It's going, and it's gonna cost. Yeah. So yeah, we need to start looking at things like that. But yeah, I mean, if somebody walks in and wants to develop Alexander Valley Resort tomorrow, I will be thrilled, but.
Definitely putting the eggs in that basket. though.
I can't put all the eggs there. Yeah, we've got to start building things smaller, and being very realistic. And then, boy, if that lotto ticket comes in, great.
And I think doing all the small stuff will create that, that's why I wanted to focus more on that river trail. And I wanted to focus on the airport, because those are the two things that run through that property, basically.
Yeah, and if we quietly create that buzz, then we will start to attract, we'll be taken a little bit more seriously, so.
And I know that the county's been pushing that, the river trails.
Yeah.
Quite a ways, further at this point. So if they actually get it to go to the south end of town.
Yeah.
This year,
Pick it up.
we need to actually promote it big time, start pushing it out there, rename it to something maybe, or something that we can start pushing out there. And the river trail is great, but it's like, push that somehow, that'll be a marketing thing at that point.
Ridge to river.
But absolutely as conservative as we can on everything, is my opinion.
I agree.
Okay.
Fiscally conservative.
Well,
And they'd be so happy when we're better.
I said, woohoo, if we did. Let's hope that we're wrong. It'll be a great day when we're like, oh, I was proved wrong.
we will continue this theme of budget updates. Is there a particular interest of focus that you'd like to hear from on next? We can talk about expenses. Of course, there'll be a conversation around staffing, so that might be good. We also have, which is included, you see pretty good, is the water enterprise. You see that in terms of revenue, we could, do a deeper dive if we want to look at that. But that gives you a pretty good snapshot of revenues. And then we certainly on the revenue side, we can delve into any of those revenues more closely. It's just really what you'd like to see kind of next.
Like I said, nothing, but I'd like to see is, more of a discussion about how the regional water quality boards and state water boards bringing forward a 50 gallons per user per day standard. It's going to be virtually impossible for us to say, oh, well, we just need to sell more water to our ratepayers, because we're not actually statutorily probably going to be prohibited from doing that. So we need to take a look at our revenue where that's concerned.
the kind of water revenue.
Yeah, we're not really gonna be able to sell our way out of this if we are maximum per user per day in our current, kind of our current residents and our projected residents, so. And I think that the other piece of that is the fact that, that Russian River water is going to be monetized. We've been getting it for free up until now. And so how is that going to impact our revenues and our overhead?
I think we save the expenses for last, personally. I like doing the water, like you said. Water, wastewater.
The problem with the expenses that we already know, it's a skeleton.
When I say that, I mean the must-haves versus the
I see what you're saying, yeah.
fun stuff.
Yeah, but
Projects,
I
yeah.
think we wanna start with, big picture. And maybe drill down, I think, to your point, Councilmember Baggy, we are skeleton, and that's gonna be reflected in the staffing costs. But there are other operational expenses and, just getting a sense of, project, the way I look at it is there's kind of the ongoing, maintenance. Which, we buy gas, we buy chlorine, we buy, products that we need to continue our operation.
Toilet paper.
Recycle. But, we also budget for, capital improvements too, so that's on the expense side now. That's not all general fund, we try to, I think we've done a good job this year of really leveraging, both grants and impact fees for a lot of our park projects and trying to minimize the impact on the general fund, by bringing these, but these are, we can do that legally with one-time expenses. It's hard to capture, expenses, cover expenses with impact fees when they're ongoing or annual operation. But we'll come up with something to bring that back, and we'll probably need to re-engage with our rate consultant, kind of help us out with some of the our water rates, to kind of look at some alternative forecast scenarios around, what happens if we are in an environment where their GPCD is regulated. What that is. We probably don't need to look too far, because the data is there when we had those regulatory controls in place. We saw what it did, and it wasn't but for the surcharge that really kind of saved us in large part, and kind of not fully closing the gap, but at least making the gap much smaller than it would have been. It would have been jeopardizing if we didn't have that in our rates. So, direction, I hear direction clearly, and we'll work on bringing the water rate revenue back. Thank you for further discussion.
Anything else on this one? We're on the E2 discussion, proposed organizational changes in the Cloverdale Police Department.
Thank you, Mayor, and I want to first take the opportunity to congratulate our new chief. Thank you for joining us. Chief Ferguson's kind of wrapping up everything. His last week will be next Friday or next Thursday, and at which time Chris Parker will officially take the helm. But on Friday, did the oath of office in front of his colleagues. It was a really nice event to see all of your colleagues there, and former Chief Stewart to acknowledge your becoming the chief. And so welcome aboard, and kind of right off the bat, I think Chief Parker is looking at how to ensure that the police department continue to provide a high level of service to the community and address the community policing needs. Is being promoted to or from lieutenant, obviously left that position vacant, and we've been recruiting now. I know Shannon's on the watching the call or listening. I think we've been recruiting now for
first of October, or the first week of October.
in the first week of October. So basically over 2 months, and I don't think we've gotten or received one application. And
Technically received one, but they weren't qualified.
right.
There's some-
One application. We haven't received one from a qualified applicant.
Yeah.
Other bit of background is, Marlene Gonzalez, our police officer trainee, is scheduled to, graduate from the police academy on Friday
Oh, wow.
at 11 o'clock. No, Thursday,
Thursday.
excuse me.
Yep.
So I'm planning to be there, as I know, Chief Parker and, Chief Ferguson, parentheses, RET. Will be there. So we are adding an additional officer, but I think, Chief Parker's looking at, how do I address the real needs of the department, and he's proposed some organizational changes. And Chris, why don't you, you prepared a PowerPoint slide, and maybe you can just walk. I think we all have it in front of us, so you can walk us through that.
Yeah, and it's gonna save you money and increase services.
Okay, next
Yeah,
time.
saving that money. So you guys, did approve a staffing plan, back in 2018, 2019, with Chief Kramer. There's some outdated stuff in there, which I'll bring it back to update it. That included, the lieutenant's position, which obviously what I just vacated, but, and so originally we had, 3 sergeants, a chief, and then 9 officers. Our needs right now, to adjust, the supervision guy, is to, we didn't have the interest in the lieutenant, is to sort of freeze that spot, hire a sergeant's position, and then backfill that. And I'll kind of walk you through it here. So we currently have, one sergeant that just got back from, leave of absence for about 2 years. He's been out for 2 years. The other sergeant has been out for about a year and a few months now. So it's really only him and I right now for supervision for the department. Still working with Shannon on the status of that second sergeant. So to add a third is really only adding a second sergeant to the mix currently, to address the gap there, since there was no interest in the lieutenant spot. So that would do a solution to the officers. So that would put us at 3 sergeants, technically 10 officers, and a chief.
Do you think you have interest in the sergeant recruitment?
Yes, that would be an in-house promotion. Then we would backfill that. And I'll also have the cost in here that that's we're saving money, but
Did Marlon bring somebody with her?
well, I did have some interest from the academy on officer position, but I didn't have outside interest. They've been contacting me about coming here as well, so which was good. But anyways, so that would address our immediate supervision needs. And then we wanted to add a police detective to enhance our investigative services. And if you kind of think about training one person versus 10 people, there's so many different intricacies to doing an investigation, search warrants and arrest warrants and all kinds of things, that we can focus on one individual to do, take over an in-depth investigation versus taking, if a graveyard guy gets it, then we have to adjust his schedule, backfill him, and then do that. So there's a lot of pluses to adding a police detective. They had a police detective before I came here at one time. It is currently in their MOU. It's a 5% increase for that person. And again, it just it makes sense.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Are you a little motivated by this, by the bill that we got hit with? By one of the major crimes that happened.
The sheriff's bill.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sheriff's bill.
oh, you're
What do you think of Dave's schedule?
Yeah, I had some few choice words for them. Yeah, yes.
Okay, thank you, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and it's important to point out, I think the police detective position is not an additional office.
Correct.
It's
Right,
a
but it's
designation.
a title change, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
which is a 5% increase, and the cost as identified in the slide was this was costed out by Shannon, was $6,680, not including overtime.
Right, overtime is already covered in our other. And so the cost savings to add the sergeant would be about $4,000 versus the lieutenant. And then to backfill that, which would be a Pepper employee, we would save roughly $39,000.
Just a quick question, the savings, a sergeant, are they on the salary or are they hourly still?
Hourly.
And then does this savings include the overtime that they would?
No, the overtime is included. You already have it scheduled for it. Yeah.
Would there be less overtime if you have 3 sergeants?
Theoretically.
Working 3?
Yeah. It's theoretical.
Working or not? Yeah, so right now, so really I'll backtrack with this, go back 3 weeks. It was just me and an officer. I do it on call because obviously I can't do it 24 hours a day. So I had an officer taking on call while I was doing other days. So he was filling in for, coming out, if the officer needed or doing answer questions and that type of thing. Obviously I would get a call for something serious, but so it was just me, which is not good. Liability, all kinds of other things, but once we did determine what the 3rd sergeant that's out on medical, what his position is, if he retired medically or just retired out, we would bring back to the lieutenant spot, having the two sergeants there. Keeping our same structure that we typically have now.
I like that plan.
And just,
Yeah.
one thing I think, I know that Chief shared with me is in regards to the lieutenant position. One of our challenges in recruiting for that, I think, is pay scale. I mean, I kind of view this, there's 2 reasons. One is just there's constraints within the field of policing. But there's a lot of jobs available, a lot of police chiefs, a lot of departments looking for officers. And what you're seeing is a real escalation in salaries across the board. And it's challenging to keep up with the market. And I think that's particularly true of lieutenant position. We were fortunate to have a great sergeant candidate last time. I think it's ideal to have the chief, a lieutenant, especially for kind of that progression and keeping the continuity of leadership in the department. But I really do support what that Chief Parker's put together in terms of a recommendation. I think it's needed fairly quickly. Parker Chief did ask if I could do this starting December 1st, and I said, well, so he was on top of it, and I appreciate that. But I said, I want to make sure it comes before the subcommittee. And, if there is obviously it would be a change. I think we would want to bring forward, the kind of an updated org chart to council for review and input. I don't think it necessarily has to delay these changes, especially if the committee says, hey, let's go for it. 'Cause we would start getting that, we've got to get the flyer out and do the recruitment for the sergeant position ASAP. But again, we just wanted to make sure they were being transparent and we're getting the input of the subcommittee.
I think it's a great plan.
Same. And I think that if we have to put it on the agenda, let's put it on next week's agenda. Let's just push it. If there's no, and if it's a action item, I think we can put it on consent calendar.
Yeah, I'd say put it on.
If
consent.
someone wants to pull it, they can pull it, but this is what it
This
is.
is too important.
Easy, so.
Right, I think we can move forward without council.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there's anything that.
If
dictates
anything,
council
if
approval, but-
anything comes up,
Yeah.
put it on consent. Is there a clear direction?
If there was increased costs, I would definitely say, well, bring it to council, but given the cost reductions and the immediate need for supervisorial service support within the police department, I think we need to move forward quickly.
Perfect.
Chief, anything else you want to add?
Get that other one resolved.
Yes, please. So that's something we pushed on Chief Ferguson to try to handle this.
Yeah.
Thinking of that little bit of baggage.
Well, and I know that you touched on it, but this was, I mean, said, league leaders, I'd say Thursday, Friday of last week, everybody's feeling this. And so much of it is the demographic cliff, the massive retirements, very small millennial generation without a lot of, with a shortage of lieutenant level, like mid and upper management level experience. And we're feeling it across departments, we're feeling it, small cities, big cities. And, I don't know how much it helps to just be like, well, we're not alone, but we're not alone. It's not anything that we've done or lack of leadership for sure. It's just that these are the employment realities today.
Yeah.
I mean, we were fortunate to, the way I look at it with the police officer position is filling it with a local resident who was, had a real strong career interest in the field, and we were able to get her into the academy, and so and have a person kind of grow up here and be part of our police force. I think is almost the avenue you almost have to look to anymore.
And for community-based policing, I think that's more important than ever. But the other piece of it was that the ILG, the Institute for Local Government, is launching a plan to work with the federal dollars that are going to come down for apprenticeships and internships. And that's something that we've talked about for water treatment, sewer treatment, others. But I think we need to look at apprentice programs, make sure that we're looking for that funding or looking for those opportunities for apprenticeship programs locally.
Right.
Reach out to high school kids and just be like, you're looking for careers. Here's what you can, here's what's open to you. Because when no one grows up, everybody wants to grow up and drive a train. I mean, who doesn't? But and a lot of people want to grow up and drive or be a police officer or a firefighter. That's kind of what all the great kids books. But how many of them say I want to grow up and be a water treatment plant operator? But it's a pretty cool job.
They don't know any better than the smart ones because they're looking at all the money.
Plumbers and electricians and all of these things that city employees that we need to fund. We need to kind of make sure that we're in the high school.
Right. And we're gonna, budget permitting has been a standing item on the Public Works Subcommittee, in reference to the operators in training or OIT program, both which are available for both wastewater and water. And, we've been trying to work with our own staff to even get folks, who are already working for us, can they dedicate enough time to get that OIT, to get to be able to qualify for the certification. So, we're trying to be creative in that space, but to, get some young kids out of high school, and it's a tremendously wonderful opportunity for them to have a career and make more than city manager.
There you go. I'd like to see this under administration. I'd like to see this handy item, making sure that we're kind of in touch with ILG and looking at those apprenticeship programs and seeing where we can plug in. And do some outreach to the high schools, but also means reaching out to Santa Rosa Junior College for their through their certification program, so that we're making sure we're feeding we're putting people in, we're reaching out to kids early so that we're putting them in the funnel. Hopefully, we're not putting them in the funnel for other cities. I know that's gonna happen, but we need to start reaching out to them early about the opportunities to work and live here.
It's easy, chief.
Sorry, I jumped to future agenda, and so I apologize.
Wastewater, good work. Easy, thank you guys. All right, want to go to the standing items, David?
Sure, Mayor, the first one is the Measure P cannabis report, and these are just, if you have any questions, let us know. We also included the water rate revenue tracking worksheet and the grants tracking worksheet, and we're currently updating that right now. There's a number of grant opportunities that we've been looking at to keep that worksheet updated. So if no questions, or if there's any questions on that.
Just one quick comment, unless someone else has anything, is with the cannabis report, I'm gonna say it again, and we're going to really have to look at the tax base on that, because we're getting hit and this off. We're losing money there. So we need to do something different. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'm just gonna say, we obviously see the percentages that we set are way too low. And not working.
Can we look at them also beside the sales tax revenue that they're generating? So we would look at the whole picture,
Right.
maybe at the next
I
meeting.
agree with that.
Yeah,
See if there's a decline.
I just wanna see so that we're looking at,
Picture,
looking at the whole.
how much revenue, make sure, and then the same thing.
Yeah, we can list the, I mean, in terms of the cannabis report, we don't break down the sales tax because it's confidential, but what we can do is at least identify, the names of the cannabis businesses, the amount of permit fee revenue that we collect, and then.
Permit fee sales tax, I don't need
Yeah.
it, I don't need it.
And we don't even know the names of the businesses. It
Yeah.
could be 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
However you want to word them.
Yeah.
But they are. Okay, it's not.
I can look, but just look at the excise tax revenue, sales tax revenue, everything, and then a real number of billable hours that's going to managing program. Excuse me, I don't think that sentence was gonna get up for next week. I tried. But you get the idea.
All right, any other questions on the least F1 through F3? Just a quick update on F3 grant writing. We are going to be bringing forward the next council meeting. Kevin's working on it right now, is a project for our annual CDBG grant. What we're proposing to bring forward as the council's priority project is to seek CDBG funds for ADA improvements at the Scouts Cabin. Really focused on access, making sure that there's a ADA compliant access. Right now there's stairs in the front.
Yeah.
As well as we're going to seek to see how far we can leverage the funds, make the bathroom ADA compliant. So Kevin's coordinating with our city engineer, Vanessa Apodaca. She's had some experience in a similar type of project, and identifying kind of where, make sure that the accessible path and all the ADA requirements are addressed in our proposal. But Kevin will be bringing forward a resolution to ask council to prioritize that project, and that's kind of consistent with our goal of continuing to develop our Parks and Rec program, and we want to try to use this as an opportunity to make some improvements to Scouts Cabin using grant funds.
But it's
It's
also,
a quick turnaround. The applications due January 8th. And that was required, so.
After announcing it mid-November.
projections as far as like potential revenue from Scouts cabins side by side with the request, is that appropriate? Or
Yeah, we probably might be a little early for this grant, but I think for the budget,
For the
especially at the
budget,
2-year budget, we should be doing that, or at least come up with a program on, you know, if we could rent it and how much revenue it could generate. I think that would be,
Just helpful information.
yeah, absolutely. You know,
We're-
we want to start the programming phase too, and kind of leveraging this process to engage with an architect that can help us to do some of that so that we, you know, we want to make sure the facilities is designed in such a way that supports, you know, public rentals and activities and, you know, all that stuff.
But this is a good first step. I mean, we could potentially get, you know, a decent amount to get the, you know, and the CDBG is really geared towards ADA stuff, so it's perfect.
Perfect, yeah.
And you're still pushing for the sidewalks and with that as well as the scouts cabin, so it's not just focused on.
Well, we got the, last year's we got for the first street, and we were going to initially apply to get more money for the first street, but we feel like we can backfill that with other funds. And this is, the scouts cabins, this is really a perfect project for the CDBG, so.
Yeah.
F4, David?
Yeah, for Russian River Reuse Collaborative, we previously brought that forward and subcommittee recommended their support. There's a MOU that's being drafted, or an MOU has been drafted, it's being circulated for comments. Once it's in good shape, we'll bring that forward for the subcommittee's review and ultimately council review. It's, you know, it's all kind of volunteer work at this point. So it moves slow, but our city engineer has been attending the meetings, participating, just, you know, making incremental progress.
5 code enforcement activities.
Yeah, so we continue to use outside consultants for code enforcement. We received provided a report and update on the code enforcement activities. We do have a report that one of the properties went to before a hearing of judge last week, was decided in our favor. We're gonna be recording a pretty significant lien against the property that will be in our benefit. So that's in the works based on the court's decision on that lien for that particular property. And we do continue to receive and refer code enforcement requests to our consultant that's been helping us with those.
Yeah, and we'll see in January, I have to bring we need to renew the contract. So I think we decided that was the direction of this committee. So there's a little bit of revenue associated with code enforcement from the people who actually, you know, pay, and then we get judgments against, so we present that to, you can see some of the offset.
Yeah, I'd like to just see that, just showing the value of having it. Yeah. And I don't need to make a profit, it's break even.
Yeah, there's been growing pains with it for sure, you know, it's nice to have someone to refer to when we get these complaints who, you know, generally they know what they're doing, but I understand that it's been, you know, affected the community in different ways when it's, you know, someone on the block turns in 10 people on the block and then there's a big outrage, and so there's been a lot of that kind of thing.
There's that. There are also 10 people having put up with one person for, you know, one home for a long time.
It's a balance.
It's a balance, yeah.
We've been pretty clear with them about what we want, and they certainly do check in with us if it's something's marginal, and we'll take a look and, you know, make a judgment. So we'll hear more about that.
Great, thank you.
Tough one.
It is tough.
That's been very difficult.
It's a really tough one, yeah.
I still hear about that. This weekend I heard about Brookside Drive. Guy came to my house and yelled at me for it.
There's one on Brookside Drive that we've been after, and the fire department is also after under the weed abatement. So we might be going on a separate track to do the weeds.
Vector control is gonna be after them, so,
It's,
you
there's
know.
blocks, block, it's just.
Okay, anything else? Future agenda items.
think you got mine.
And then, institute of local government apprenticeships and certifications.
Yeah. Thinking of 20 years down the road, but somebody's got to, so.
Else? No other attendees? Great, well, meeting adjourned at 3:11. Thank you all.
You are these ones,